Hi, everybody, and welcome to Attendance Bias. I am your host, Brian Weinstein. You know, whenever a guest messages me and wants to tell a story about a show from the fall 1995 tour, it's nearly impossible to say no. And when it's a guest who has previously been on the podcast, I know it's going to be a compelling conversation. Such is the case today, when Brian Blatt joins me to tell about Phish's incredible show from December 7th, 1995 at the Niagara Falls Convention Center in Niagara Falls, New York. Brian previously came on to Attendance Bias to discuss his experience seeing Phish in April 1994. That was at the concert hall in Toronto. That conversation centered around seeing Phish in the Great North at a time when they were at the tail end of their theater and smaller venue era, but they were still playing large venues in the summer and at the end of that calendar year. To put it another way, they had a foot in both worlds in a transition period. But today's show, that focuses in December 1995, that transition is nearly complete. Phish was at the end of a 3-month tour where they would play anything and everything. It came to a head in a most explosive way at Niagara Falls, and fans of a certain age, when tape collecting was the thing to do, know all about it. If you're a newer fan or a newish fan, you might know that this show has been released officially by LivePhish, but whether or not this show is new to you, it's worth a listen either way. So let's join Brian to talk about West Coast Phish, Western New York Phish, and Tetris, as we discuss December 7th, 1995 at the Niagara Falls Convention Center in Niagara Falls, New York. Brian, welcome back to Attendance Bias. Welcome back. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Brian. I am doing wonderful. And yourself?
I'm doing quite well. It is a Friday, the day we are recording, so happy weekend to you. I am excited for summer tour. At the time we are recording, spring tour is in full swing. The band is headed down to Los Angeles for this weekend, I believe. And I'm excited whenever Phish is playing, but I've got my sights set on the summer. So this is all bonus for me right now.
Me as well. And I still have not caught any true West Coast shows. I would like to, but it hasn't happened yet. But
one day, and then you can come back on for a third time, and we can talk all about it.
Yes.
For those of you listening, if you haven't listened back, this is Brian's second time on Attendance Bias. He appeared previously to talk about a show from April 6th, 1994 at the concert hall in Toronto. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yep. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, once we're done here, go back and hear Part 1, go back in time a little bit about, I guess, a year and a half or so from when the show we're going to talk about today. And Brian is here today to talk about arguably the best tour that Phish has ever played, one could say, and specifically December 7th, 1995 at the Niagara Falls Convention Center, which, as you can imagine, is in Niagara Falls, New York. So, Brian, I wanted to ask you, before we get into anything, you mentioned before we hit record that you host an internet radio show. Before we get into the lightning round part 2, can you tell us a little bit about your show?
Sure. It's on a local Rochester station, WAYO. It's a nonprofit, just community radio. If you're within 2 miles of the station, you can probably get it in your car. But if not, you can go to wayofm.org. And my show is called High Pitch Cavitation, and it's Saturday nights, Eastern, 11 to midnight. It's an hour-long It's an hour of curated Phish music. Sometimes I have a theme. Sometimes it's just a show or a set that I like. Sometimes it's weird, arbitrary themes that I just come up with. But it's just an hour chunk of Phish that I do every week.
So just to be sure, WAYOFM.org.
Yep, wayofm.org.
All right, so listen up to it for High Pitch Cavitations.
Attendance Bias Lightning Round.
Brian, last time you were here, we spoke about that show in Toronto. We're here about a year and a half later in Phish time to talk about the end of the Fall 95 tour, even though it's in December, right? One of the longest tours Phish has ever played. For the lightning round, we already discussed your first show last time, which was July 28th, 1992 in Canandaigua, which is around Syracuse, right?
It's basically Rochester. It's about half an hour south-ish of Rochester.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so it's more of a Rochester venue, but yes, like Canandaigua Lake,
So
very
it's
beautiful place for a show too. It like the venue looks right out over Canandaigua Lake, and it's just I wish Phish would play there more.
yeah, they played there in 2009, I think, right? When they first came back, or maybe it was 2010,
Uh,
I'm thinking of.
2010, and then again in 2014.
Every
Yep.
time they play, I think about going to see them there. I haven't yet. And I love, I've said to listeners, I went to college in Buffalo, so I'm familiar with the Western New York region. I love Rochester. If I can still get a good enough garbage plate anywhere, is that still around? Nick
Oh
Tahoe's?
yeah, I mean the Nick's isn't my favorite, but Dogtown is my favorite plate in town. So yes, there are good plates to be had.
All right. Well, next time Fish plays Canandaigua, I'm coming up for it for a show and a plate.
Fantastic.
But the point being, we already talked about your first show. What was your second Fish show, and how did it compare?
I would say the Auditorium Theater, which is about an eighth of a mile from where I'm sitting, right up the street. I remember very little. I was very drunk. I was 16 years old, 16, 17. So I'll say my third show, I'll tell you more about that, which was SUNY Geneseo, the cool gym. There was a Forbins, there was a Curtain, there was Tweezer, just a square college gym. And Trey talked about in the Forbins narration how there were all these strings coming down, and we were all being pulled up from the square. Oh, and Tetris, and there was Tetris pieces, and we looked like Tetris pieces. That's right. And then there was the space shuttle in the Kremlin. Take a listen to that Forbins Mockingbird. It's a cool one. The mics that they played in the second set had a very interesting, different sort of lead melody that they opened it up with. The only one I've ever heard like it is it's definitely worth a listen.
This sounds like a very early 90s place to be. Tetris references, Fish playing at a SUNY State University of New York college gym. I mean, this just sounds like a perfect place to be for a Fish show, the early 90s at a college gym. Around this time that we're going to talk about today in the fall of 95, before they started making that leap, they were firmly in small enough, but not that small band territory.
Yeah. It was, I'm really grateful that I got to see them then. I mean, it was yep, fully agree.
When we last spoke, your most recent show was New Year's Eve 2023, the now legendary Gamehen show. As of today's recording, what was your most recent show? What have you seen since most recently?
I would say so. I did see about a month ago Trey's solo acoustic tour here in Rochester. He played the Eastman Theater, but Phish full on was this year's New Year's run with the EDM New Year's run.
What did you think of that?
I thought it was very cool, and I wasn't expecting it. It just kind of came out of left field. I was sitting there looking up at the stuff they had up in the ceiling, and had no idea what they were going to do with it, and it was cool. It wasn't Gamehenge, but it didn't have to be. It was just a fun, cool new take on Phish music, I thought.
So Phish plays Toronto occasionally, not as often as one would like. They don't play Western New York that often anymore, right? Is that fair to say?
I mean, yeah. I mean, the last time they played, 2014, I guess, was the last time they were like in this area. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and the only time I've seen them near there was in 2000. I saw a show at Darien Lake, which is just, I think,
closer to Buffalo.
Yeah.
It's like on the way to Buffalo, about halfway between Rochester and Buffalo.
So let me ask you, what is a venue that you would consider in the Western New York region that Phish has not played or never played, to your knowledge, that you would love to see them, regardless of size? You could pick it. You are their tour booker. Western New York, or you know what? We'll throw Canada in there too. Let's throw Ontario because it's drivable.
Well, once they haven't played again in this area, I thought the Cops Coliseum, which I don't know if that's even still there though in Hamilton, and some buddies of mine, they saw some cool Dead shows in the early '90s there, and it's about a 2-hour drive from Rochester, a little over halfway between here and Toronto. But again, I don't even know if that's still a venue.
And since most of the shows we've discussed, whether in Canada, Western New York, they're within driving distance, I'm curious. So listeners get a sense of who you are as a fan, what is the farthest you've traveled to see the band ever?
That would be the 96 summer tour, the Wolf Mountain Park. Is that Park City, I think?
I think
Utah.
so, but I'll check in
Yeah.
the fact check.
That one, and then we had tickets for that whole summer tour, and we did the Wolf Mountain opener where there was a double rainbow over the stage, and Page played Somewhere Over the Rainbow on the theremin. And then I did the second night of that Red Rocks run, and then we got really sick, and we drove home and we sold the rest of our tickets and just went to the Clipper Ball at the end of the tour.
So let me ask you this. This is more of a geography question, I guess Phish geography. You said earlier that one day you want to see West Coast Phish. I think most people, most fans would consider a stop in Utah or even a stop in Colorado part of a West Coast tour. Do you agree with that or not?
I think Colorado's its own thing. I mean, it's Colorado, and there's Colorado, and then there's West Coast. But I guess from the West Coast, it's a lot closer to there than it is to here.
What about
But
Utah?
that's also just kind of like it's Rockies. I guess it's getting there, but it's not a full-on West Coast. It's not San Fran. It's not LA. It's not Seattle.
Right. There's no coast to speak of.
No.
Finally, the last time we spoke, you mentioned that the weirdest thing you've ever seen at a Phish show on our first episode was an acquaintance at the Great Went who participated in the very famous or infamous, depending on the way you look at it, Spencer Tunick nude photo.
Yep.
So what is the weirdest thing you've seen at a Phish show that didn't involve nudity?
I mean, there's probably a bunch that I can't remember, but the one that did pop into my mind was the crowd surfing at the Bangor November 2nd, 94 show, which has the Live One Tweezer show. And that venue has been demolished, but it was, again, just like basically like a high school or college gym type venue where there's just bleachers on each side and a square in the middle. And they had folding chairs on the floor. Those all ended up in the pile in the back of the room. And then it was a very rowdy local show, and people were crowd surfing.
It was a different time back then. The crowd, the scene was very different, I guess we could say.
Yeah. And that was 2 nights after the Beatles Halloween show, which I didn't go to that, but I caught this one, and that was good enough for me.
When was this show played?
So looking at today's show, December 7th, 1995 at Niagara Falls, we'll get into it in a second that it's been released officially. On the larger scale, when you emailed me about this, I was excited because I'm always looking for another reason to listen to Fall 95. I cannot get enough of this. This was the tour that I didn't think of it like this at the time, but when I was getting into Phish, I was always looking for shows from 95. Always. Like that was the sound that appealed to me. I was getting into the band when they were making the transition in 96 to 97, from their rock and roll into funk kind of sound transition. And when I listened to 95, I thought, oh my God, who is this band? And when I really zeroed in and did the research and read all the books, all 2 of them that were published at the time, before so many websites and podcasts were available, it seemed that Fall 95 was the apex, that was the highest you could get when listening to Phish. So it is a legendary tour in Phish history. Just some of the numbers: 54 shows that started in late September and ended in December. And aside from summer 99, for attendance bias, this tour, the Fall 95 one, has the most number of shows selected for the podcast. Some Fall 95 shows that have already been covered on this podcast, and this is not all of them. Halloween 95, Quadrophenia, maybe my favorite show ever besides favorite that I've never been to. December 1st in Hershey, PA. October 11th at the Compton Terrace Amphitheater. December 11th at the Cumberland County Civic Center in Maine, which I believe had Warren Haynes come on and guest. October 8th in Missoula. If you count it, New Year's Eve at MSG. So I want to hear from you. I could go on about Fall 95 forever, but what do you think it says about the band and maybe even about the fan base that so many people are eager to talk about this tour?
At the time, I didn't realize how good it was or I was realizing as it was happening. But then in retrospect, it still stands up against any tour that they've done ever since, I think. That run of shows that I did, it was Niagara Falls, Albany, Binghamton, 2 nights in Placid, and Philly. And just that week of shows was just the greatest week of Phish I've ever seen, like stacked up all together. I haven't had a run since that has been all that at that high quality, and just I don't know what they were doing, but it was good.
Well, it seemed like they were doing a little bit of everything. The more that I listen to it, the more I love it, and the more I notice about it. It seems like they were, first of all, musically, they were trying all new things. Trey getting on his percussion kit, which opened the door, I think, mostly for Page to join in with new synthesizer sounds. Always on You Enjoy Myself, right? On other songs too, but very frequently on You Enjoy Myself jams. They were playing new covers in 95, or especially fall 95. Their sound was big. Their sound was huge. When you listen to Fishman's snare drum, every single time it's hit, even in this show, when we put in the music clips, it sounds like he's firing a cannon every time. It's got this big fat tone to it. It's like he was previously playing for clubs and theaters. Now his snare drum is the snare drum that sounds like it's being made for arenas.
Yeah. I was noticing that listening to this show, he kept popping up. The recording of it is an audience recording, I think, but it sounds so good. And Fishman just kept on noticing him a lot.
Yeah, he's incredibly tight. His toms also sound even deeper. They sound much more full than they have in previous years, or at least in recordings from previous years. There's a portion, and I'm sure we'll get there during the end of this show. I think it's during Mike's song, where he sounds like Keith Moon if Keith Moon had an ounce of discipline. You know, like it sounds like he's drum soloing the whole time, but it's not. He's really it's during Reba. It sounds like he's drum soloing the whole time, but he's not just listening to himself. He is playing along with the group. And to me, as great as Trey is and his guitar effects that really come to the forefront during a lot of great jams, Page's synthesizers, Mike not quite being loud enough yet. This is probably when people for a louder mic started to get some traction. It's Fishman for me all the way. And that's part of my bias, because like I said, I was really getting into 95 Phish when I was first getting into Phish.
I'm not good at verbalizing a lot of why I love the things I love about this band. I'll just be like, oh, it's great. It's awesome. You know, I wish I had a better musical vocabulary talking about this stuff, but it is what it is.
Well, let's not talk about the music for a minute. What do you remember about the scene at the time compared to today, especially?
I was about a year and a half sober at this point, so I wasn't really hanging out in the lot that much. But I had some buddies that I would go to shows with who were also sober, and there wasn't fellowship or anything like that at the shows. I think the Wharf Rats were around with the Dead at that point, but so I just had a group of friends that I would go to shows with, and again, it was even sober. It was still just like this amazing circus that you would just show up, and it was all just, this is a thing. And I love just going to the shows and just being around all these people who were just so happy to be there and happy to experience this band that was just blowing everyone's mind every night.
You said something a little earlier that I'd like to explore just a little bit. You said that at the time, like during that week of shows that you loved, kind of across New York State and down to Philly, that you weren't quite aware of how good it was. Is this the sort of thing, like there's a quote from the TV show The Office where one of the characters says, "I wish you knew you were in the good old days while they were happening," or something to that effect. Was that it? Was it like you were, pardon the pun, but a fish in water that you didn't realize you were wet, and that's how good the music was?
Yeah, and it was also still I think this show was probably I'd have to look at my stats. I 10th or 12th show at this point, even though I'd seen them for a couple of years at this point, but I hadn't gone to a lot of shows. So I think I was just still new enough to Phish that, I mean, I was getting my mind totally blown, but I think I just still was pretty much a noob, even though it had been a couple of years that I'd been seeing them here and there.
Well, tell us a little bit more about yourself at the time. So, who were you in December 95 that led you to this show? How did you end up there?
I remember I had a 1985 Oldsmobile Custom Cruiser, this gray station wagon, one of the big ones.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember we drove that all over the state, and we picked up. I remember there was a guy that we picked up in Philly and drove him up to Lake Placid. His name was Uriah, or that's what he said his name was. And I have a picture of him somewhere. Never saw him again, but we gave him a ride from Philly to Lake Placid. And
Uriah, if you're out there, get in touch. I want to hear. I want to hear this story from your point of view.
Yeah, but I was just I wasn't in college or anything. I was out of high school, but I was just, I think, working at a landscape company and then maybe a catering company, just jobs, just whatever, and just living in Rochester and going to shows when I could. And I was really lucky that I got to go to this whole week of shows in this December tour. I mean, it was just amazing.
And when we first got in touch, I'm talking about a couple of years ago, you first wanted to talk about Toronto. What gave you the itch to get in touch with me fairly recently that you want to talk about this show, December 7th, 95 in Niagara Falls?
I think even after I'd been on the first time, I definitely wanted to come back because I just love your show, and it's just really fun talking about Phish with someone. And this one specifically, this year is the 30th anniversary of that show, and it is still in my top 5 all-time shows that I've ever seen. I mean, I have serious attendance bias for this show. Yeah, just because it's amazing. It is well, we'll get into the specifics, but it's a real good one.
Set 1.
Well, let's get into it because they open with an interesting bluegrass opener, which they rarely ever do. Since before or since they open with the Old Home Place. I wonder if this is part of the mentality at the time, the Phish mentality, what we could glean from what they were thinking in terms of set list placement as they were adjusting to new venues and an expanding repertoire. Try everything. Let's do acapella shows up later in the show, like old original songs show up in this show, brand new songs that aren't quite fully baked yet. They open with the Old Home Place, and I love that they always play bluegrass. There's never a phase of Phish where you can't find bluegrass. And I don't know, the first thing that hit me, like you mentioned, the great sound quality of these audience recordings, gorgeous vocal harmonies, and then a great piano solo from Page.
And then this one, I don't think they played. They kind of stopped playing this one at this point. I think. I don't think they really. I don't know how long it's been since they played Old Home Place, but either this one or Long Journey Home might be like 90s was the last time they played it. I don't. You can check on that, but yeah, this was. They were still on the heels of 94 when they had that whole bluegrass phase they went through, and they were still kind of like and they still to this day do it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they do everything. So this was a nice way to open, to get people settled in, and then they go right into the curtain. It's a really nice surprise. It's not quite a segue, but just about. It's as close as you can get. So they play the curtain, and I always considered this song a rarity because by the time I got into Phish, I started listening in 96, but I didn't see them until 1997. It became a rarity by that point. But when I checked back, it was played 11 times overall in 95, and 8 of those times are on the fall tour. So I guess it's not entirely unexpected. Were you in on set lists at the time? I know information traveled a lot slower. I remember, we didn't have phones to check what they played last night. You had to ask, internet access was not widely available. So how keyed in or clued in were you?
Not at all. In 95, I don't even remember. I think I may have I had one tape trading friend that I found in the back of Relics, a woman in Philly, and we traded some tapes. But other than that, it was just kind of like when my friends got tapes. And then about a year and a half later, I worked at a coffee shop, and a buddy worked in the same plaza at a stereo. It was called the Stereo Shop, and it was a stereo shop. And they had that whole bank of display models of dubbing decks, and he was a taper. And I would go at the end of the tour, and he would have all of them going, and he would just be. And so I had a good connection of 97 to 99 of high quality tapes, just like hot off the press. But
yeah, you had pay dirt.
Yeah, in 95, it was just kind of like I didn't have internet. I didn't know anyone who, so it just slowly trickled in.
Right, right. And for what it's worth, this version of the curtain is gorgeous. 1995 was a good year for composed sections. I'll put it that way, for composed sections and for speed, because they nail the curtain and then they go right into AC/DC Bag, a true don't miss a beat segue, curtain into AC/DC Bag. And this version, the way I wrote it in my notes was, has some pep in its step because I'm a 90-year-old man and that's how I speak from the 1890s.
I would say this whole show, there is so much pep and speed in so many tunes in this show. And I wrote for the curtain, I wrote, it's one of those transition songs that is as good curtain with as it is without. I love the curtain without just as much as with because of that transition. And I looked it up. Every single version of the curtain without has an alligator at the end of it. It's like they've never like stopped that song and just like had a pause. They just go right into something else every time they play it.
Right.
And this one was Bag is like the perfect segue.
Right. They used to play Susie Greenberg into AC/DC Bag. Yeah, right. That very last note is the first note of the next song. It's art. Yeah. And this version of Bag, like I said, it's pretty quick, pretty peppy. There's mostly straight rhythm when they start the jam, and then kicks up with a guitar solo about 6.5 minutes in. And what impressed me the most, because 1995 is oddly composed and schizophrenic at the same time. Like they keep the tempo very solid, and yet the intensity keeps growing. And that's what hit me when I listened this time, that it was so impressive for the intensity to keep increasing while the tempo was always consistent. And after AC/DC Bag, they played Demand, which is a rarity for any era, no matter what. It was played 5 times on the tour, and at the time of this recording, 16 times overall. 1-6, not 6-0. So I can hear, though, listening to this, and I've listened to this set a few times since you suggested it, I could quite understand that it doesn't exactly coalesce live compared to the studio version on Hoist, which I enjoy very much.
Yeah, it's a quirky song. It's a weird one. The thing I wondered, and I hadn't wondered this till just like when I started listening for this show and writing down some notes. First time after hundreds of listens of the Demented Split Open and Melt in the second set, which we'll get to, was it triggered by this Demand in the first set, and just that Hoist connection? And just
I never thought
whenever
of that.
I hear Demand, I think of that awesome Melt jam that comes out of it on the album version. And I'm wondering if that was in their heads to play Split Open and Melt because they played Demand.
I never thought of that. That's a good point. And I wonder if that's true, it would be all but confirmed if they played or sang Yerushalayim Shel Zahav at the very end, just like they do on Hoist. They did not, right. But they would only play it. They played it 16 times overall to date. They would play it once more in 1996, and then not again until New Year's Eve 2009. And then it would take a break until Bill Graham Civic Auditorium in 2016.
Okay.
So this is like I don't know, the monster in it takes a break every 27 years and only comes back to town to terrorize the folks. But as of now, the last time they played it live was at the Bill Graham in 2016. So it's been at least 9 years.
Well,
before they go into a much more common song, Rift, which was another straight segue, by the way. There's no pauses in this show.
nope, they are moving.
But like Curtain into AC/DC Bag, it is super fast. And interesting that when they played the Curtain, as you mentioned, without the with part, the Curtain without, but then they play Rift. So that guitar riff, do, gets played either way.
Yep. Yeah. I wrote, I'm so glad I got to see 95 Phish. No flubs by Trey here. He nailed it. And and he's nailing it today. It's funny. I was re-listening to this past week. And then today I was in my truck. I'm a delivery driver. I'm driving around and I put it on, but then I was like, well, I kind of want to hear, the Bill Graham shows from the other night. I want to hear that gumbo. And I turned that on and I'm like, this is sounding just as good as this 95 Phish. I mean, they are on fire right now. And I am just counting the days until I get to see them again. Sorry.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. Yeah. But it's funny how you said that they're nailing it and they're on fire now, which I agree with. Don't get me wrong. I'm flying out all the way to Colorado to see them this summer. But I wrote in the notes for this show during Rift, the word flawless came out of my fingers. I would not call what they play now flawless, but that's part of the charm. That's part of what makes it really great. Because they develop their good jams now. Back then, it just seemed like someone flipped a switch and all they had to do was play fast and something great would come up.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore. But this Rift, also super fast, I have to imagine the energy level at this venue in Niagara Falls was through the roof.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen what this place looks like.
Well, you mentioned in the notes that it's now a casino. So I've been to Casino Niagara. Is that the same building?
No. It's just like a low curved building that you could actually, if you walk to the side of it, you could walk out onto the roof. And Phish played there the one time, and the Dead played there one time, I believe in '84. You might have to fact check that one. But the Dead played there once, and my friend Tim went to that show, and he said a bunch of heads just walked out onto the roof of this, and we're just hanging out on the roof. And if you look it up, it literally is just this curved kind of airplane hangar sort of shape. A very interesting venue, which I wish was still a venue because it was really cool. But
that sounds exactly right for Phish in Niagara Falls in 1995.
Yeah.
And after Rift, they play another classic, right? They're going with their older songs, although at the time, not super old. Slave to the Traffic Light is one of their first original songs, right in the middle of the first set. So just as I was thinking the energy level must be through the roof, there's a little cool down in a sense. Let's slow things down a second. The Phish.net Jam Charts calls this one, and I'm quoting them, one for the ages. Do you agree?
I just said the playing stands out. I can't read my own handwriting here, but yes, I believe it's really good. I wrote 740-ish feedback, beauty, and then Trey starts to pick up steam, and it's business as usual in the most beautiful way. So yes.
That's a good way to put it. It is business as usual in the most beautiful way, because even at the beginning of the jam, at about 5 minutes, there's like this progression that they developed where Trey, I don't know if it is actual finger picking, but it resembles finger picking at least, while the band it's like soft, 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 loud, loud, and then they stop again and they take breaks. It's very patient and it's very graceful. by around 8 minutes and 45 seconds, the usual slow build for Slave comes around. And Mike and Fishman, I'm going to mention Fishman a lot. They're solid as ever with Trey and Page kind of layering on top, and Page is on the piano, which stands out quite a bit at this time in their sound. And the band coalesces by around 11 minutes, and at the end of it, 11 minutes and 30 seconds, that's what I hear in my head when I think, oh, one for the ages for Slave to the Traffic Light. This is a version that I think when people think about it as one of the great Phish songs, this is a version that kind of supports that mentality.
Yeah, I think I also, when you asked me if I think it's one for the ages, this is also one of the tapes. This is it. Okay, there's this, there's that, the Toronto show, and the second set from the Great Went second night. Those three tapes, and I think there's Albany 95, 2 nights later from this show. Those 4 tapes are the most listened to tapes that I've ever. I mean, I've probably listened to this show 300 times. I know it so well when I hear it, but I might not know what I'm hearing sometimes because I've heard it so much, you know.
I know exactly what you mean. I feel that way about my first show, as well as a handful of others. But my first show, I do have Sirius XM. So when it just serendipitously is playing, let's say Tube, or there's a really great version of Run Like an Antelope from my first show, within like 3 seconds, I'll know it's that version.
Yeah, and you know
it's in my DNA.
Yeah, you know every note that's coming. Like this show, I listen to it, I know every note that is. Like I couldn't hum it to you, but when I'm listening, I know exactly what's about to happen because I've heard it so many times, and I never get sick of it either.
Right. It's evergreen. So we're about halfway through the first set. They end Slave to the Traffic Light with this very beautiful big climax, and then they go into Gaiute. And my first thought was it wouldn't be Fall '95 without Gaiute, because they brought it back at Halloween that year after kind of tweaking it for about 8 or 9 months. They came back with what we know now as a fully fleshed out Gaiute. So I wanted to ask, nowadays, people are kind of jaded about it because it's so long, because it never changes. This version on The Story of the Ghost is the same as the version you'll hear tomorrow night in Los Angeles. Were people really excited in 1995 about Gaiute, or was it also go get a beer, go to the bathroom while they play this?
I feel like the same people were complaining then that are complaining now.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
I like it. But I like Time Turns Elastic. I like all those really long, like composed ones. I love all of them. Again, people think they suck the energy out of the show. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I like hearing them play it well. I don't like hearing them struggle with it, which I've heard them struggle with it before. But this was a really great version, and
it's a good version of it. And even at the end, at about 8.5 minutes, there's still power at that closing. There, no matter how many times it's heard or how many times they play it, it's still a powerful ending. Before they again slow things down with Bouncing Around the Room, fan favorite. And I love when it's played at this speedy tempo. Like, say what you will, I know there are haters for this song too, but that portion that's at about 3 minutes of this recording in every version, because they're almost all identical, when everyone is going full throttle, is just a little joy of Phish music.
No, I love Bouncing, and every time I see them play it, I'm like, is this going to be the version where they do a 20-minute bouncing? It never happens, but every time they do it, I'm like, oh, is he gonna go? Is he gonna go? And I know that they could, but I think it just never occurs to them to do it.
I learned at a jam night of the Baker's Dozen that you really can never say never about anything. You really can't. When Sample in a Jar turned, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Anything can.
And there's the one version, I think, on Japan. I don't know if it's 99 or 2000. There's one version where they jam bouncing for about 40 seconds longer than usual. And it is pretty cool. I don't remember what show that's at. Again, you can fact check that one, but there is one quote unquote jammed out bouncing, and it was on their Japan tour.
You bet I'm going to look that one up because I've never heard of it. And after bouncing around the room, we're getting close to the end of the set. They play Possum. Well, they play the song Possum, I should say. Funny bass playing at the very beginning because the band is kind of teasing one another. Like one person is playing loud, soft, aggressive, timid. Who knows if they were kind of playing at each other or just to the crowd and back. There's a little extra from Trey before the vocals come in. This is back when they would still play with the intro, which they don't do as often anymore these days.
Yep.
And they hurry through the vocals. It really does sound rushed in a way. Like, let's get back to just intense jamming, which they do. Very intense guitar work from about 8 to 10 minutes. And I put in caps, this is 1995 intensity and dissonance at the same time. Like incredible stuff that seems to never end, where I say to myself, how did they do that?
I agree. I wrote the Still in the Era of Great Possums. The intro builds. I felt like this intro has gone the way of the slow piper. And I don't know how they were doing it, but they were doing it in 95. And I wrote from around 1/3 near the beginning, and you notice this throughout the show a lot, and in 95 in particular, Trey had some nice watery Leslie sounds that he was doing on his guitar, which you hear throughout the show at different points. And he doesn't do that as much anymore, but I don't even know if he has a Leslie on stage anymore at all. But
I don't know. I'm sure someone can tweet or post or whatever at us and tell us whether or not that's true. One of the gearheads out there. I love that you brought up, though, that watery Leslie sound, because for someone who you say doesn't have a good musical vocabulary, I swear I can't think of the right way to describe that guitar sound that Trey has. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think that's exactly perfect.
Yeah, I the only reason I know that because I saw a video and I knew that he had a Leslie on stage. That's the only reason I knew that. But
Well, it works. And at the
Yeah.
end of the set, where at the last song they sing "Hello, My Baby," it sounds mic'd up compared to maybe a year before previous when they might do it unmiked. And the venue has a capacity of about 4,000 people. So
Yeah.
it's a nice topper to a really good set. Like, what an energetic set. It comes in at just about 1 hour long.
That's it?
I think so. I'll double
Huh?
check that, but I'm sure it's like maybe an hour and 2 minutes. It's really not a very long set.
But again, those good sets that anytime I'm at a show with a short set when it's good, you don't even notice because it doesn't matter. It's just it is
Right.
as long as it is, Yeah.
It's an hour and 9 minutes. I just checked.
Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't say I fell out of love with back to Possum for a second. I really fell back in love with Possum though. A couple of years ago when Derek Truck sat in with them at SPAC, and the take on Possum with his sit in, and basically ever since then, anytime they play it, I love it again. Not that I hated it, but it was one of those songs where like in more recent times it didn't really do as much for me as it had.
I'd
But
agree with
now
that, especially in 2010. It became kind of a running joke all of a sudden.
yeah. Now it seems like everything they play, they've got an energy and a passion to their playing right now that is just I want to see them as much as I can.
Set 2.
Hi, everybody. Brian here to welcome you to the set break of today's episode of Attendance Bias. First, thank you for listening. And second, just a quick reminder to tell you that even though Attendance Bias comes to you for free, it does take a lot of work and it does take quite a bit of money to keep the lights on here at production. So I just wanted to ask a small favor if you could support the podcast in any number of the following ways. If you could leave a review or a rating of it on whichever podcast app you use. If you could spread the word, telling a friend or someone you think may be interested in it about it. Or probably the most concrete way is to go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donate however much you can financially to help with the continuing costs of Attendance Bias. So thank you again so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the second half of today's episode. Set 2 opens with an audience chess move, as was the style at the time. It was made by, I hope I pronounced this man's name right, Peter Zirkel of Chicago. It's quaint now to look back, especially at videos, because when I was reading about the audience band chess tournament, I pictured the chessboard to be enormous, but when I see video of it, it's much smaller. I mean, it's not teeny tiny, don't get me wrong, but it's much more like do it yourself, DIY. When you see it, like a good high school senior's arts and crafts senior project.
Yep. And but it looks so cool, just hanging up there. It just says, yes, we're nerds and we play chess. And
yeah, and even more than that, it kind of represents this somewhat in between phase of Phish's career where they know they're getting more popular. They know that venues, 4,000 person venues like this, then at Niagara Falls Convention Center, will probably be a thing of their past pretty soon. So how do we stay connected to the audience?
Yeah.
Because we're growing physically apart from them. So this was a pretty cool way to stay connected, I thought.
Yeah. It was. I thought they would do it again, and then they never really did. But
well, they did it on New
now.
Year's Eve 2020.
Well, yeah, but back then I thought they would do it again. But again, anytime you think they're going to do something again, they're not going to do it again.
Of course.
They already did that.
That's my rule of New Year's Eve gags, that if you can guess it, that means Phish won't do it.
Yeah.
And after that opener, or not really an opener, but after the audience chess move, let's say, wow, if this is the proper opener of the set, split open and melt. You talked about this at the very beginning of our conversation when we mentioned Demand. To me, this era is the peak of split open and melt. This version is just over 17 minutes long. And I'm going to let Phish.net do my work for me. It's described as, quote, a sick wrecking ball version that will pound your head. It starts with Inagata Davida jamming to warm up onto improvisational twists and turns in a tense, hammering peak and somewhat bizarre ending, very demented. That's the end of Phish.net. Some choice quotes from my notes are melodically insane, the type that I like, rhythm games, holding together, moving forward. Every band member is playing a different song. What was your, and those are just selections. What was your experience with this Split Open and Melt, which I recommend to anybody, whether or not you like the song?
I remember being at the show, and it doesn't apply as much now because they actually have these effects that do this, but I remember listening to it in the room thinking, this sounds like a weird broken computer or something. Now listening back and listening to more recent shows, they actually make broken computer sounds with their effects now that sound way more computery. But at the time, that's what it sounded like to me. It sounded like this weird broken computer or something. And it was just another case of like going to see Phish and them doing something totally new that I'd never seen them do before. And every time I would go see them, they would do something like this. Maybe not to this level, but they would surprise me every time. And this was one of the two surprises of the show. Was this and the mics were both just like obviously the highlights of this. They all sounded great. Fishman sounded great. I wrote it started to get frantic around 6 minutes. Page slamming the piano. Everyone's locked in. 7:30. Trey does a couple rapid fires and it kicks things into the next gear. And I could keep. I wrote a whole bunch, but it's just one of those. You got to listen to it.
Yeah, I agree, and I like how you phrased it. That the best part, and the reason we're such addicts about going to Phish shows, is because of that. It's like going to baseball games where you might see something new that you've never even seen before, whether it's something pedestrian, like a song you haven't heard previously, or something insane, like this jam that sounds like by all rights, by all musical rules, should not hold together or work at all. And yet you can't turn it off.
Yeah.
It boggles your mind, and it's what brings you back to the next show. And so on. For a song especially that really pushes boundaries, this is a very unique version of Split Open and Melt. And then they go right into the most straightforward song they have, probably. They play a very beautiful and new at the time version of Strange Design.
Mm-hmm. I'll say, and here's one of the points I wanted to say. One of my questions I have for you. This probably is my favorite ballad. What is your favorite ballad? Do you have one?
This would take some thinking. Strange Design is
top 5.
Yeah, no, Strange Design is certainly, it's got to be up there. I always want to hear it. Waiting in the Velvet Sea, I think the lyrics are so meaningful. I really enjoy Thread a lot, or not Thread, Shade.
Yeah. I was
Shade
gonna say
is
Thread's more of like a heavy.
Yeah, no, I get those two songs just by their titles for some reason.
Yeah,
I get
yeah.
them confused. I know the difference, and I know they're nothing alike. But Thread, I think, is my favorite Phish ballad as of now. Just Shade. Sorry. Shade. It's such a sweet song. The fact that I've fallen in love since I was divorced has something to do with it. It's it really hits you in the right places. And as far as generic wedding songs go, Waste is, it's overplayed as far as, couple Phish songs, but it's got its integrity. It's a really good song. So Strange Design, and also Waiting in the Velvet Sea, because it reminds me of Coventry, which absolutely broke my heart, and as well as the hearts of thousands. But it's a reminder of the band at their most vulnerable. And now when they sing it, or when Paige sings it and the band plays it, it's with such strength and resolve. And they don't play it that often anymore, actually. But it's kind of a reminder of how bad things could be, which in turn makes me to think about how good they are and how lucky we are.
Good answer.
Thank you. That's my spiel on Phish ballads. So I'm gonna root for Shade from now on. That's my short answer.
That's another one of my favorites. I love that tune.
Yeah. But I agree with you with this Strange Design. It's straightforward after one of the oddest songs or versions of Split Open and Melt that one could expect to hear. And then they go into what is listed on the set list as Taste That Surrounds, which is a stop on the Taste song arrangement merry-go-round, where they had like two different songs that then came together, split apart, they combined them. And it starts at kind of the second or third verse of what we now know as Taste, before moving through the Fishman Step Into Space, which to my ears is not practiced. It doesn't sound very good. Fishman has become a better singer than he ever has been vocally, but it is not quite there. This song is not fully baked.
No, I mean, again, they're in the middle of it. They're tinkering. And I never got to see one of the actual full-on Fog That Surrounds just Fishman versions, but even Fishman, when he isn't fully on, it's still charming, and I love hearing him muddle through his singing, even when it's not great. It's still, I love it.
I do too, and the jam is good too. It's, if you didn't know better and you just started when they started jamming, you'd say, "Oh, this is Taste." So it's almost there, just not quite yet. Because by 1996, when they were in Europe, that's when they would really hash this out.
Yep. And that leads to my second question I had for you, which is Taste being one of their go-to type 1 jams. What would you? And I would say, for me, it's a three-way tie between Taste, Limb by Limb, and Theme as my favorite type 1 Phish jam song. What would yours be?
See, my first instinct was to say Twist, but I've seen that go way off the rails. So I know that's not necessarily a type 1 song. So my first type 1 would be Twist, if that counts. Stash, I don't know if that's type 1. I feel like I'm failing
That
miserably.
Can be both. That's on the line, but that could be either.
Because like a 1993 Stash, there's something so exciting, but it never really leaves its structure.
Yeah, true.
And this is a left field answer. I really love Gotta Jaboo. I could just bop to that beat for 20 minutes if you let me. Tony Markellis's bass line, I know it's Mike who plays it now, obviously, but the repetition of it digs in and it doesn't let go. So, and I've never really heard Gotta Jaboo go fully type 2. So that'll be my final answer. Gotta Jaboo.
Okay. All right. Dig it.
And speaking of type 1 jams, though, the next song in this set, which to me, I like that you said Mike's and Split Open and Melt were the big highlights. For me, this Reba is a major highlight for me. And holy shit, is it fast. They're done with the lyrics by 2 minutes. And just take a second, anyone listening, think about how many lyrics there are in Reba.
We were singing again, lipstick, perfume, like in a room, so listen to a slide, cause I'm here with the rain. Me too, in the hotel tub, we were decorated from a bit. Tip, sip, we were bound to the night with a lipstick, perfume, running too far with a truck. Take a look at the cheetah on the prowl, and a cane, take a photo of the water, tag out to a tree. Under reaching the ground with a lipstick, perfume, you go vision of the pump, and flip it up in a circle. Down the pipes, sit back, tag it, someone to the picture in the store, I said bag it, tag it, someone to the picture in the store, bag it, tag it, someone to the picture in the store, bag it, someone to the picture in the store. At the bottom of the tub, picked up a jar and screwed the top and rushed it trapped into the water. A little scoop of plastic and some coffee grounds and lightning, and she stirred it with a ladle that her grandmother had bought her. Threw a pot of melted wax, a 4 foot in the hoof. Apple core, worms galore, came some corrosive. Coconuts and chloroforms, sugar and some corn. Toxic waste, a purple fish, it was not as well as
They are going at 1,000 miles per hour.
I think this is the fastest one ever, I would believe. I have not heard one even close to this fast. Yeah.
Yeah, I said, I wonder if they're just playing fast on purpose, if they're hyped up on the set so far, if they're on drugs, or all of the above. Who knows? But the jam begins really in earnest at about 6 minutes. It's peppy, but it's a lot quieter. And that's what always impresses me again with Fishman is his ability to keep a tempo, but advance or bring back his volume. And that inspires the rest of the band to do it.
Yeah. Just another beautiful Phish jam. And I wrote 940, Pop Goes the Weasel.
Yep.
I heard that. And there was a couple other jams, and it happens all the time where Trey plays something and I'm like, I know this is something, but I don't know what it is. Or maybe it's nothing. I just think it's something. I just love it, just whatever comes into his mind, and it just comes out in his fingers, and it just goes with it. I love it.
Well, it's to me, the way I interpreted when I re-listened to this is I always think of Phish when I was getting into them as if your 4 best friends were jamming in a basement, but they all happen to be the greatest musical virtuosos on earth at their instrument. Yeah. And they could just play whatever they wanted, as you just mentioned, whenever it comes into their head in real time.
Yeah.
And to me, this version of Reba is like what I, in my wildest dreams, wished I could play like with my friends in my basement in high school. It doesn't sound complex. It really doesn't, because the Reba jam is really like 3 or 4 chords at most.
Yeah.
But what they're doing with it as they're punching it around is just astounding. And it's almost spiritual. Like this one digs into my soul. You mentioned the Leslie. The watery Leslie at 13 minutes and 20 seconds. That's what made me fall in love with Phish. At 12 minutes to 13 and a half minutes. That's the stuff. And at the very end, it sounds like either Trey or Fishman missed the coda, but then Trey keeps his sustain going to turn the mistake into an opportunity.
Yeah, when it kind of just like crumbled at the end there, and it was so beautiful the way it just. I've never heard them end the song like that, and it might have been a mistake, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, yeah, I love that Reba. That Reba, if I could, take one song from this show, it might be that one, but tomorrow it might be something different. So next up is Julius, because there's no whistling in Reba. That as again was the style. So it's a straight segue into Julius. According to Phish.net, this is the only version of Julius that only has a Page solo, does not have a Trey solo.
I guess I didn't notice that Trey didn't solo, but I did note that Page had a nice solo in this one, and I noticed that. But,
yeah, on piano and then on the organ.
Huh. I gotta re-listen to it. I guess I didn't notice that Trey didn't do a solo.
Right? It's something that you're so in it, you don't even notice things like that, right? And Fishman is also, as I mentioned way earlier, is having a lot of fun on the tom drums. Like they're just, to me, it fills out the sound in a way that pre-1995 did not, and by 97, his kit was so different to sound funky. It didn't have that deep resonance any longer. So to me, this Julius jam, even though it is type 1, is very emblematic of what Phish's sound is like, their oral sound in 1995. Goes right into Sleeping Monkey. I feel like the set could end here. It's right at the 1 hour mark, basically. And I thought this would be a closer or an encore with kind of a rote version of Sleeping Monkey with all the goofiness that implies. And it works because we need a balance compared to the drama of the rest of the set.
Yeah.
And they pair it with Sparkle, which I like. The pairing of Sleeping Monkey and Sparkle is if like two weird, goofy songs that the band we know, because they've said it from the stage, loves to play, and neither of them really change from version to version.
Nope. Yeah, I wrote another frantic speed tune seems to be the theme of the night is speed.
Yeah, for sure. And they go right into it. They dive. Now we're in the fourth quarter. They dive into Mike's song that you mentioned as, right, your highlight of the show.
Yeah, and probably a Phish musical highlight of all time. And this would be my third question for you. This being the middle, which we'll get to, the middle section of this Mike's is one of my all-time favorite musical moments that I've witnessed. What would be one for you?
A favorite musical moment that I've witnessed, or does it have to be Mike's
like
song?
one of those like next level, just an all-time Phish musical moment for you.
I'll name two real quick. So the first one is the easy one, which is from my first show, was they played Tube. It's December 29th, 97. I've listened to a ton of Phish up to that point before I went to see them live, but I didn't have a lot of contemporary tapes. So when I went to go see them in the New Year's run in 97, I didn't have a lot of tapes from 1997, from that summer or from previously on the fall tour. So I didn't really know about their shift into their funk sound. And when they played this Tube, this is the old Madison Square Garden before all the renovations. I was behind the stage all the way upstairs. And the way that Kuroda was using the lights, everyone was moving at the same exact time. In the same vein, like everyone was, to be blunt, was in the groove, to put it in a very cheesy way. I had just turned 15 years old So I was not new to live music necessarily, but new to like this experience. And I had never seen or felt anything like that before. Just 18,000 people all literally moving at the same time in the same way to this song that was just musically holds up until the end of time. It reminds me also in 2010, I think it's August 6th or August 7th at the Greek Theater in Berkeley. And I'm sure anyone listening knows I'm about to mention Cities. And I had seen them 15 times in 2009, and I enjoyed all those shows. But the Greek Berkeley Cities was when I'm like, oh shit, this is Phish that I remember from 1997 also. Like it really opened musical worlds. And I looked around, there's a great YouTube video somewhere that shows someone recording, like video recording this version of Cities and panning all the way from his right, all the way to the left. And that's kind of the same exact feeling. So when you ask me that question, I could go on for years, I bet. But really, those are the two that stand out to me. Two from December 29th, 97 at MSG, and the Greek Berkeley, the Greek Cities, Berkeley Cities, unmatched in my experience.
After I get off this with you, I'm going to take a walk and listen to both of those again. Just
recommended.
Yeah. So,
but back to this Mike song. So Trey develops this really fun little guitar melody at the beginning, and he sticks with it for more than 10 seconds. And it starts to develop this whole attitude for this jam. And in 1995, it was kind of rare for Trey to stick with a melody for more than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
He was all over the place.
I wrote Descending Riff. Is that, I'm sure we're talking about the same riff.
Yeah, probably.
Kept going. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a little bit later, there's like unrelenting power was the phrase I thought of. And it's like Trey being his own version of Jimmy Page, like leading the band through hardcore rock and roll. And when I think about 1995, Mike's song, probably from the New Year's Eve run, but Mike's song is one of the MVPs of this calendar year, 95. And this version or this type of playing is what cut its teeth. This is what makes legendary Mike songs that legendary.
Yeah. I wrote around that time, you said Jimmy Page-ish. I said Trey starts playing this chugging, metalish, crunchy riff, soon followed by the closing lines of the closing of the first jam.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They
Yeah.
delve into the second jam, which is kind of offbeat. It's a little dissonant. It's kind of drony, except for Mike, who's playing very melodically.
I wrote droney. Yep.
Yeah. And Trey's on his percussion kit at about 9 minutes, which leaves a lot of space for the rest of the band. And notably and appropriately, Mike is the one who takes the lead. It is his song. And then there's this deep, throaty, distorted guitar before becoming actually pretty clean. And then they bring it to a major key groove at the end. And a new progression starts that will lead right into Weekapog. It's extremely positive by the end of this, because Mike's can get quite dark, but this one is all upbeat, positive vibes. That does go straight into Weekapog groove.
Yeah. This one, and it might just be that it's 95, but again, as soon as Trey starts getting on the drum kit, that's when you can just hear that kind of drony sort of set 95 sound that just I mentally in my heart I have this one linked with 2 nights later, the Yem from Albany, the Shaft Albany Yem, that is another all-time Phish moment for me. And for some reason, this Mike's and that Yem are like my 2 favorite Fall 95 moments, are these moments. But they're not musically the same, but for some reason they're the same.
They're spiritually linked.
Yes.
Right. And let's not forget, they've been on tour for like 2 months by this point.
Yeah.
Right? It's not strange for a show 2 nights later or 2 nights previous to have a similar feeling, if talk about lack of musical vocabulary, but to have a similar vibe or feeling than the one you're listening to in the moment. They're talking every night for 3 hours without speaking any words. So it's not unusual for certain topics to come up over and over again. And Weekapog starts in, I don't want to say the wrong key because it's the key they were playing that Mike's groove in, but they have this telepathic key change into the correct key. Yeah, right? It's not like they made a mistake and played it in the wrong key. They were playing Weekapog, forcing it out of Mike's, and they just, again, telepathically key change once the rhythm is established. And we reach liftoff about 5 minutes in, right before they go into this really fun digital delay loop, which reminds me, speaking of linking 2 shows, of the legendary Mike song in New Year's Eve 1995 that closes one of the sets.
I wrote Mike starts doing this up and down repetitive bass thing with Paige doing something in the background, and then Trey and Phish, and then it's just a drone. Then somewhere between 12 and 12:30, Trey hopped back on guitar. There's a lot of swirling sound. Yeah, it just was another one that you just got to take a listen to.
Yeah, it was a lot going on.
One thing I did notice that when they start the digital delay loop jam, the opening notes, Trey starts it, and then Paige does one hit on his synth or some sort of keyboard, and it basically plays the first 3 notes of Mike's song. And that how the digital delay loop notes are it sounds similar. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I didn't hear this or not, but
We're all a little
just,
crazy here.
yeah. Again, it just when he first starts the delay loop jam, it sounds like the first three notes of Mike's song again.
Interesting. All right, so I'll go back and listen to that. We both have homework to do.
Yeah.
And then after that insanity of Mike's, by the way, nothing in between, just Mike's into Weekapog with a digital delay loop. They play arguably the most traditional song in their repertoire. They sing Amazing Grace. How much more traditional can you get than a hymn to close the set? And then the only encore is Uncle Pen, which is a beautiful bookend. We started this whole conversation with a bluegrass old home place show opener. They're closing the show with Uncle Pen.
Yep. And I think this might be the only show they've closed both sets with an a cappella tune. That could be another fact check, but I don't know if you'd probably have to go through a lot of shows to fact check.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't get paid for this. But Brian, thank you so much for coming back on to talk about this really crystalline moment in Phish history, the end or toward the end of the Fall 95 tour, where they were almost literally doing everything, like throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And by being on stage so often together, it usually worked. And no matter what you were going for, you got some of it. So to come on and really dissect December 7th, 1995, and you telling about yourself and who you were as a 20-year-old living in Rochester and seeing Phish in this amazing space of their time, can't thank you enough for sharing this experience with us.
Well, thanks for having me again, Brian. I love talking to you about Phish.
And that's it for today's conversation with Brian Blatt about December 7th, 1995 in Niagara Falls. As I'm sure you were able to tell, Brian is quite a knowledgeable Phish fan and loves to chat Phish, so we got to make sure we got everything right today.
Attendance bias fact check.
First, just as a reminder, Brian's radio show is called High Pitch Cavitation. It airs on Saturday nights from 11 p.m. to midnight on WAYO-FM, wayofm.org from Rochester. The Canandaigua Lake venue that Brian and I spoke about during the lightning round is called CMAC, C-M-A-C. Phish has been playing there since 1992. They did play the venue on June 29, 2010, and most recently on July 15, 2014. Brian's third show at SUNY Geneseo was played on April 25, 1993. It contained quotes and teases all over the place. To put it another way, the footnotes on the Phish.net setlist would require its own fact check, and we just don't have the time for all of that. The Copps Coliseum in Ontario is still standing and hosting events. It is in the city of Hamilton and has a capacity of 19,000 for concerts, although it is mostly used for minor league hockey. For the 1996 summer tour, Wolf Mountain Amphitheater is in Park City. Phish played there on August 2nd, 1996. The show opened, as Brian mentioned, with Page playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow on the theremin, which was his first use of the instrument with Phish. When talking about this show's opener, The Old Home Place, Brian suggests that the band doesn't play the bluegrass tune much anymore. I hate to be that guy, but they've played it on a fairly consistent basis since it debuted in the summer of 1994. As of this recording, it was last played on August 7th, 2024 at Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids. Brian was correct about the song My Long Journey Home, which was last played on November 29th, 1995 at the Municipal Auditorium in Nashville. And finally, the jammed-out version of Bouncing Around the Room was played on June 9th, 2000 at On Air East in Tokyo. It's not really an extended version, but what separates it from other versions of the song is that Trey noodles and solos over the ending instead of playing the same four-note composed guitar part at the end. It's not mind-blowing, but it is notable and worth a listen. And that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Brian for joining me today, Phish.net for its help with the fact check, the Mockingbird Foundation for everything they do to further children's music education, and Phish.in for the amazing recording used in today's episode. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, please support the show by visiting www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donating anything you can. You can also follow Attendance Bias on social media. Thank you again so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.